You ever have one of those moments where your own parents look you in the face, say something completely insane, and you just sit there wondering how you even share DNA? Yeah, that was me 2 weeks ago, standing in my own apartment doorway, holding a mechanic's invoice I never agreed to pay, watching my mom and dad act like I was the one being ridiculous for not bailing out my brother for the third time in 2 years, like it was just expected, like that was my job now. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just smiled, went to my desk drawer, and handed them a sealed envelope. Inside, a notarized document they never expected. Because what they forgot was that I wasn't just their son. I was also the one managing their trust fund. And I was done. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind a bit. My name's Victor. I'm 32, single, no kids, and I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment I actually own. No mortgage, just paid off clean. That's not meant as a brag, just context. I've worked in finance since I was 24, and I'm good with money. Like annoyingly good. Budgeting, investing, asset management, you name it. It's always just clicked for me. That's probably why my grandfather, before he passed, named me the trustee for the family fund he set up years ago. It was meant to support my parents in retirement, help with emergencies, maybe support future grandkids if used wisely. Emphasis on wisely. He trusted me to make sure of that. My parents, meanwhile, I've always treated money like it was a magical resource that just shows up when needed. My mom is the emotionally manipulative type, always knows just what to say to guilt someone into doing what she wants. My dad, more blunt force trauma, insults, shame, threats, whatever gets the job done. And then there's my younger brother Caleb, 25, who's the human embodiment of not my fault. He's crashed 3 cars in the past 2 years, all while unemployed, uninsured, and somehow convinced he's the victim each time. And every single time. Guess who my parents turn to? Me. Because you're the responsible one, Victor. Because you actually have money. Because he's your little brother, and he needs you. Never mind that Caleb never once apologized. Never mind that he doesn't call me unless he needs something. Never mind that I've already paid for 2 different cars that he managed to total within 6 months. They just expected me to keep cleaning up his messes, like some sort of family janitor with a checkbook. The first time, I felt bad. He called crying. Said he was scared. The accident wasn't his fault, it was. He had no one else to turn to. I helped him get a used car. Nothing fancy, just something reliable. For $1,200. Cash. I didn't expect a thank you. I definitely didn't expect repayment. But I figured maybe it'd be a wake-up call. Spoiler, it wasn't. 8 months later, car number 2 met its doom. This time a friend borrowed it and wrecked it. Caleb called again. My parents called. I said no. They showed up at my apartment unannounced, sat me down, and guilt me into it. He's lost, my mom said with that watery-eyed look she pulls out like a party trick. We failed him. But you can help him get back on track. I cracked. I caved. Another $5,000 gone. That one lasted a whole 11 months before it ended up in a ditch after what he claimed was a weather-related spin-out. There wasn't a cloud in the sky that day. So when they called this time, I didn't even pick up. I knew what it would be. I saw the text first. Call us ASAP. Something happened with Caleb. He's okay. Thank God. But his car is a total loss. Then the phone calls. Then the voicemails. All ignored. I'd had enough. That was the line for me. I had already decided, quietly, firmly, that I wasn't paying for a third mistake. Not a chance. And I knew it wouldn't stop unless I made it stop. The crazy part? I didn't even tell them no yet. I just didn't respond. And within 48 hours, the guilt campaign began. My mom left a voicemail that started with, "I know you're busy, sweetie," and ended with, "It's not like you have kids. What else is your money for?" Like I was just some financial holding pen for other people's problems. Then my dad called. His message was short. Ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, you think you made it on your own. I remember standing in my kitchen, holding my phone, just staring at it like it had slapped me. Everything they'd done for me. I paid my own way through college with scholarships and part-time work. I got my first internship on my own. I bought my first apartment with money I earned. I even refinanced their mortgage once to get them a better rate and never said a word about it. But none of that mattered. Because the one thing I refused to do, this one time, suddenly made me the bad guy. The worst part? It wasn't just about the money. It was about how expected it had all become. How there wasn't even a conversation. Just a demand dressed up as obligation. Like I was some vending machine for family mess-ups. Insert guilt, get cash. And then, 2 weeks later, they showed up. No call, no warning. Just rang my buzzer at 7:45 p.m. on a Thursday, like it was perfectly normal. I opened the door, and there they were. My mom holding a folded mechanics invoice, my dad behind her with that look like he was daring me to say something. We figured we'd just drop this off, my mom said cheerfully, as if handing me a birthday card. It's not that much this time, just the deductible and a few repairs. Caleb's friend is covering the rest. I looked at the paper. $2,780. My dad shrugged like that was reasonable. You've spent more on suits. I didn't respond. Not right away. I just turned, walked to my desk, and pulled open the drawer. I'd been ready for this. Not just emotionally. Legally. Financially. I slid the envelope across the counter and said, "You're going to want to read this." That was the moment. The shift. The point of no return. And the exact second they realized. I wasn't playing their game anymore. I wish I could say they opened the envelope right away. That there was some dramatic gasp or an immediate reaction. But no. They didn't even take it seriously at first. My mom laughed, like genuinely chuckled and said, "What is this, Victor, a bill of your own?" My dad grunted, "You making us sign some loan agreement or something?" He had that sarcastic, "I'm smarter than you" tone he always used when he didn't understand something and felt insecure about it. I just leaned against the kitchen counter and waited. I didn't need to say a word, because I knew what was inside, and I knew it was going to hit like a freight train. Eventually, my mom unfolded the letter and started reading. Her smile slipped by the third line. My dad peered over her shoulder, impatient, before yanking it from her hand. The more they read, the more their expressions twisted. First confusion, then disbelief, then anger. And when my dad's jaw clenched and he said, "What the hell is this supposed to mean?" I knew we had finally arrived. Let me explain. When my grandfather passed away, he left behind a modest estate. Nothing wild, just smart, long-term investments, a paid-off home, and a trust fund designed to provide supplemental income to my parents once they reached retirement. The thing was, he didn't exactly trust my parents. He'd watched them blow through money for years, buying into pyramid schemes, leasing cars they couldn't afford, taking out second mortgages, and refinancing to pay off credit cards. My mom always believed a big break was around the corner. My dad just thought the rules didn't apply to him. So when Grandpa sat me down one year before he died, he said something I'll never forget. "I love your parents, but they'll torch this money in a year if you let them. You're the only one who knows how to say no." He made me the trustee. I couldn't touch the money myself, but I controlled the flow. The terms were clear. Monthly disbursements capped at a specific amount, only for essential living expenses, with the power to freeze or suspend if there was evidence of abuse, coercion, or financial irresponsibility. It was a quiet power, the kind nobody noticed until now. The document I handed them? It was an official notice, notarized and filed, revoking their access to the trust pending a 6-month financial review. That meant no more monthly checks. No more emergency reimbursements. Nothing. And it was perfectly legal. Because the moment they began treating that trust like a personal ATM, or started using me like one, it violated the terms. "This is a joke," my dad said, tossing the paper on the counter like it burned his hands. "You can't just cut us off." "Yes," I said calmly, "I can." And I did. My mom's voice went high-pitched, the way it always does when she's cornered. "Victor, don't be dramatic. This is about Caleb's car. It's not a big deal. We'll pay you back." "No, you won't," I said. "You never have. And it's not just about the car. It's about everything." And finally, I let it out. Years of resentment, disappointment, and exhaustion boiled up, and I just stopped holding back. "I paid for his last 2 cars. You didn't. You showed up with fake apologies and promises, but I knew even then he'd blow it again. And what did you do? Nothing. You covered for him. You excused it. And now you're here again, acting like I'm the one being unreasonable for not lighting another few thousand on fire." My dad scoffed. "He's your brother." "No," I said. "He's your son. But you treat me like the parent. Like I'm supposed to bail everyone out because I'm the one who turned out okay. And you've never once asked what that cost me." My mom blinked. "Cost you? What money? You make good money." "That's not what I meant," I snapped. "You think it's just about finances? Every time I've helped, I've had to pretend it didn't hurt. Like it didn't suck to feel like an afterthought. Like it didn't matter that I worked for every cent while you treated my success like a family asset you were entitled to. You show up unannounced. You hand me bills like I'm your accountant. And when I say no, I'm the bad guy. My hands were shaking. I hadn't realized it until then. All those years I bit my tongue, smiled through gritted teeth, and told myself they didn't mean it. All that poison had finally bubbled up. My mom started crying. Not the full sobs she used when she wanted to win sympathy. No, these were the confused, wounded tears of someone who truly didn't see it coming. But Victor, we're family. Exactly, I said. So why have I felt like a wallet with legs for the past 10 years? They didn't answer. My dad stared at the counter. My mom just clutched her purse like it could anchor her to the floor. It was dead quiet for a moment. You could hear the hum of the fridge. And then she said something that flipped everything on its head. I just don't understand why you won't help him, she whispered. He's struggling. You've never struggled. You've always been fine. And there it was. That one sentence. That one stupid sentence that somehow erased everything I'd ever been through in their eyes. I never struggled. She didn't know, or didn't remember, how I lived off protein bars and ramen during my first internship, how I juggled night classes and a weekend job just to make rent. She didn't know I'd sold my old guitar to cover my first tax bill, that I'd cried in a public restroom the day I got laid off at 27, wondering how I'd pay for groceries. She didn't know because I never told her. I didn't think she cared, and maybe that was my fault. I kept it all quiet. I didn't want to burden anyone. But in doing so, I let them write a story where I was just fine. So fine that I became the safety net they could stomp on every time their golden child fell through the cracks. My dad finally spoke. So what now? You cut us off, and what? Feel good about it? No, I said. I feel sick about it. But I'm done feeling like I owe you something for being your son. They left in silence. Didn't say goodbye. Just took the envelope and walked out. I thought that was the end. But I was wrong. Because 2 days later, I got a phone call from Caleb. I didn't answer when Caleb first called. I saw his name flash on my phone screen, and my stomach twisted. I already knew it wouldn't be an apology. I was still raw from what had just happened, still turning their words over in my head like jagged stones. You've never struggled. That one kept echoing. Like everything I'd endured to get here didn't count because I kept my head down and my mouth shut. Because I'd been too good at pretending it didn't hurt. He called again. And again. 5 missed calls in one day. The next morning, he left a voicemail. Look, I don't know what mom and dad said to you, but this is serious, okay? I need help, man. I'm trying to get my life together. You don't even have to give me money, just co-sign on something. They said you're being a jerk again, but I know you're not heartless. That was the first time I'd heard from him in over a year that wasn't about money. And he still didn't say my name. Just man. Like I was some guy from Craigslist, and not the brother who'd saved his ass twice. I ignored the message. Then I sat in the dark for an hour, just thinking. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't that my parents expected the world from me and gave me scraps in return. It was that I kept hoping, somewhere deep down, that one day they'd see me. That they'd look past the usefulness and recognize who I'd become. That they'd say, we're proud of you. And actually mean it. Not because of what I gave them, but because of what I endured to give it. But that day never came. And after that voicemail from Caleb, something in me broke, quietly, like a hairline fracture finally giving way under years of pressure. For about a week, I didn't sleep much. I kept the apartment dark. I stopped answering texts, even from friends. I didn't go to the gym. I ate whatever was closest, half a loaf of sourdough and peanut butter straight from the jar most nights. I told my team at work that I had a family emergency and needed time off. They didn't ask questions. I was grateful for that. I wasn't spiraling, not in the dramatic sense. There were no alcohol binges or breakdowns. But I was slipping into something just as dangerous. Numbness. That cold, gray fog that makes everything feel like background noise. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. Like I'd been a mule carrying everyone else's load, and now that I'd set it down, I didn't know what I was supposed to do with my own hands. And that scared me. The truth is, I'd built my whole identity around being the responsible one. The fixer. The safety net. That was my role in the family, and I played it so well I didn't realize it had become my whole personality. When I stopped playing it, there was just this hollow space. Who was I without their emergencies to solve? I remember one night around 2 a.m., I stood in my kitchen drinking stale coffee, staring out the window like the answers were going to form in the clouds. And I said out loud, to no one, I don't think they ever actually liked me. It hit like a confession, because maybe they didn't. Not the real me, anyway. They liked what I could do, what I could offer, the money, the stability, the problem solving. But me? The son who got himself through college without asking for a dime? The brother who silently paid for car insurance, phone bills, and even part of Caleb's tuition one year, just so he wouldn't drop out? That version of me wasn't lovable, just useful. That night, something shifted. I turned off the lights, walked to my bookshelf, and pulled out a notebook I hadn't touched in years. It was from when I first started working in finance, back when I thought I might one day run my own firm. It was full of scribbles and sketches, logo ideas, business names, portfolio concepts, even random quotes that meant something to me at the time. One page had a single sentence written in all caps. When you're done building others, build yourself. I stared at that page for a long time. Then I got up, took a shower, shaved, and cleaned my kitchen. Not because I felt better, but because I wanted to feel better. And that was enough. The next morning, I opened my laptop and made a list titled Stuff I Want to Do, but never had time for, because I was always fixing everyone else's problems. It had 3 items. Open my own portfolio consulting business. Travel somewhere where no one knows me. Actually learn to cook something that isn't eggs or pasta. That was it. Not grand. Not groundbreaking. But it was mine. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted this phase to be quiet. Private. Just for me. Step 1 was the easiest. I'd been doing portfolio consulting on the side for years. Friends, friends of friends, sometimes random referrals. I never charged. I just liked helping people grow their money without drowning in jargon. So I spent the next 2 weeks drafting a business plan. I built a bare-bones website. Bought a domain. Picked a name that made me laugh. Victor Assets. Yeah, it's corny. Sue me. I set up an LLC. Nothing flashy, just the foundation. Something real. Step 2 came almost accidentally. I was looking at flights out of habit and found a round trip to Iceland for dirt cheap. Booked it without overthinking. I left a month later. Just me, a rented car, and a journal. No schedule. No family. No phone calls. The first morning I woke up in Reykjavik, I walked out of my tiny Airbnb, breathed in the cold air, and actually felt my shoulders relax for the first time in what felt like years. I didn't have to be anyone out there. I wasn't the good son, or the rich brother, or the responsible one. I was just Victor, a guy watching geysers erupt and eating overpriced gas station pastries. And for once, that was enough. Step 3 was trickier. I started watching YouTube chefs. Tried making shakshuka. Burn it. Tried again. Got it right. Moved on to Thai curry. Failed. Tried again. You get the idea. My kitchen started smelling like a restaurant most nights. For the first time in my adult life, I looked forward to dinner, not as a chore, but as something I was creating. During all of this, my parents went quiet. No calls. No texts. No, are you okay? Or let's talk. It was like I'd been cut out, which was ironic, considering how quickly they'd accused me of abandoning them. At first, it stung, but as the weeks passed, it started to feel like peace. Then, 3 months after they'd stormed out of my apartment, I got a message. Not from my parents. Not from Caleb. From their lawyer. Apparently, they were contesting the trust suspension. Not because they wanted access again. They'd already burned that bridge, but because they believed I had exceeded the bounds of the trustee role by not providing advance notice of the freeze. The lawyer's message was surprisingly polite. Your parents have asked me to initiate a review of the trust terms, as they feel your recent actions may have been emotionally motivated and not in alignment with your fiduciary responsibilities. I laughed out loud when I read that. Emotionally motivated? Sure, but still legal. Still within bounds. Still in the exact spirit Grandpa had intended. Protect the assets. Prevent abuse. Stop the bleeding. I forwarded the email to my own lawyer and booked a meeting. That's when I learned something else. The trust review wouldn't just validate my decision. It could also expand my authority. If the board overseeing the trust determined that my parents were acting in bad faith or attempting coercion, I could be granted full discretionary control. That meant I'd no longer be required to release any funds. Not now. Not ever. It would be mine to manage completely. I didn't celebrate. Not right away. Because the truth is, I didn't want revenge. What I wanted was simple. Respect. Recognition. Peace. But sometimes, the only way to get peace is to take away the thing they think they own. I told my lawyer to proceed with the review. And that's when the silence broke. Caleb called again. But this time, it wasn't just another voicemail. He showed up. In person. At my apartment. He showed up in the middle of a Sunday afternoon, like he hadn't been a ghost for the last 3 months. I'd just gotten back from the gym, sweaty and exhausted, carrying groceries in one arm and a duffel in the other. At first, I didn't even recognize him. He was sitting on the steps outside my apartment building in a gray hoodie and beat-up sneakers, hunched over like a stray dog, too tired to move. Victor. I stopped in my tracks. It wasn't the first time Caleb had ambushed me, but it was the first time he looked different. Not angry, not entitled, just empty. I didn't say anything, just stared at him from a few feet away, groceries slowly getting heavier in my arms. I know you're probably going to slam the door in my face, he said, standing up slowly. But I just need 5 minutes. Please. It was the please that did it. I'd never heard him say it like that before. Like he actually meant it. I didn't invite him inside. But I didn't walk away either. I set the bags down on the bench near the entrance and crossed my arms. Talk. He rubbed his face. I messed up. Again. The car. The money. All of it. And now Mom and Dad are losing their minds. They're saying you're trying to ruin everything. That's not new, I said flatly. They've been saying that since I was 15 and refused to cover for your fake report card. He looked down at his shoes. Yeah, well, this time it's worse. I raised an eyebrow. How so? He hesitated. They're trying to access Grandpa's trust fund directly. Said they hired some guy to override the paperwork. I don't even know what that means. They're talking lawyers and court stuff. And I swear, Victor, they're freaking out. I didn't react. Not visibly. But inside, a familiar cold calculation started clicking into place. So they'd escalated. Of course they had. I'd expected it, in a way. I just hadn't expected Caleb to be the one to tip me off. And what do you want, Caleb? I asked carefully. He looked up. For once, there wasn't any fake humility. No guilt tripping. Just tired, raw honesty. I don't know. I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of messing up everything. And I'm tired of them pretending like it's all your fault when it's not. I blinked. That one caught me off guard. They say you're selfish, he added. But you're not. You're just the only one who ever says no. And that's what they can't stand. I studied his face. His eyes were red, not from tears, but from lack of sleep. There were bags under them, like he hadn't eaten or rested properly in days. You here to ask for money? I asked. He shook his head. No. I'm here because I think you should know what they're planning. That's when I unlocked the door and let him inside. We sat at my kitchen island. I made coffee. He drank it like it was the first warm thing he'd had in a while. And then he told me everything. How my parents had gone to another lawyer, a shady one, according to Caleb, and asked if there was a way to remove me as trustee. How they were spreading lies to friends and distant relatives, painting me as some vindictive son who'd hoarded their retirement. How they even started drafting letters to the Trust Oversight Committee, claiming financial abuse and mental instability. They were trying to turn my responsibility into ammunition, and they were dragging my name through the mud to do it. That's why I'm here, Caleb said. I don't want to be part of this anymore. I used to think you were just trying to control everything. But now I get it. You were trying to protect it. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. A dozen thoughts raced through my head. But one thing was clear. My parents had declared war. But this time, I wasn't going to play defense. I was going to set the board, make the moves, write the ending. It was time to plan. And Caleb, ironically, was going to help. The first step was information. I needed to know exactly what they were saying, who they were talking to, and what legal arguments they were planning to use. Caleb agreed to feed me updates, not as a spy, but as someone finally tired of the dysfunction. He moved into a friend's guest room and started distancing himself. He even got a part-time job delivering groceries. Not glamorous, but it was something. Progress. Meanwhile, I went back to my lawyer and laid out everything. The smear campaign, the legal threats, the emotional manipulation. He wasn't surprised. They're bluffing, he said after reviewing the emails. But that doesn't mean they can't do damage. If they sway enough family members or get traction in court, they might create noise that forces a review. Even if we win, it could tarnish your reputation. I nodded slowly. So what's the move? We go proactive, build a counter-narrative, show a pattern of behavior, document everything. And, if you're willing, we petition for full discretionary authority. No oversight. No monthly stipulations. You control it all. I swallowed. That was a nuclear option. But if they were already setting the house on fire, maybe it was time to stop bringing buckets and start locking the matches away. I agreed. Next came the setup. I began compiling a decade's worth of receipts, emails, bank transfers, and messages. Every dollar I'd given Caleb. Every time my parents asked for money. Every voicemail, every invoice, every urgent favor disguised as a demand. I even tracked down a few relatives who'd quietly confided in me over the years, admitting they'd seen the same patterns. They agreed to write statements. Then I did something bold. I invited my parents to a lunch meeting. I didn't tell them it was a trap, just said I wanted to clear the air and talk face to face. To my surprise, they agreed. Maybe they thought I was coming to grovel, or maybe they believed they'd scared me enough to negotiate. Either way, they walked into that restaurant holding the confidence of people who'd never been held accountable. We met at a quiet bistro downtown. I reserved a private room. No witnesses, just them and me. My mom wore her usual pearls. My dad was in a stiff-collared shirt he probably hadn't ironed himself. They smiled like politicians. I returned it with a smile of my own, tight-lipped and surgical. After the waiter left, I said, "Let's cut to it. I know what you're doing. The lawyer, the letters, the stories." They didn't flinch. My mom feigned confusion. My dad just sipped his water. "I don't care about your gossip," I continued. "I care about the trust. The one Grandpa left me to manage, because he knew this would happen." "Victor," my mom started, but I raised a hand. "No, you don't get to act innocent. You've spent years weaponizing my kindness. You expect money like it's owed to you. And now that I've put up a boundary, you're treating it like betrayal." My dad leaned forward, voice low. "We're your parents. And I'm your son," I said. "Not your piggy bank. Not your personal accountant. And certainly not your scapegoat." I pulled out an envelope. Another one. Inside were copies of everything. Timelines, receipts, witness statements, even a few photos of Caleb's wrecked cars, complete with dates and my payment records. I didn't slide it to them. I placed it in the center of the table and said, "This is going to the board next week, along with a petition for full authority. You started this war. I'm ending it." My mom's face went pale. My dad opened the envelope and scanned the first few pages. His lips pressed into a tight line. "You wouldn't," he said. "I already did," I replied. And then I stood up. "Enjoy your lunch." They didn't call after me. I walked out of that restaurant lighter than I'd felt in years. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing their game. I was writing the rules. They didn't try to contact me after the lunch. Not for a week. Not for two. Not even a text from my mom pretending like nothing had happened. The silence was deafening, and honestly, a little satisfying. I imagined them at home, pacing, rereading the packet I'd handed them, maybe Googling legal terms they didn't understand. The longer they stayed quiet, the more I knew they were panicking. And they had every reason to. Because while they were used to bluffing and bullying to get their way, I had shifted the game to a playing field they couldn't control. And I had the board now. The review hearing came 3 weeks after the lunch. It was held virtually, a formal video meeting with the board of trustees, 2 attorneys from the oversight committee, and both sides presenting their cases. My parents didn't even show up in person. They sent a lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I was told they had opted to remain emotionally uninvolved and let their counsel speak for them. I wasn't surprised. They knew the evidence wasn't in their favor. The lawyer made a weak argument about emotional misconduct and withholding essential support, but he kept stumbling over the trust language, especially once my legal team presented years of documentation. Caleb's multiple car accidents, my financial transfers to cover those damages, the mechanic invoices, the emails from my mother requesting funds without justification, and even my dad's voicemail calling me ungrateful and accusing me of forgetting who made me. Then came the letters. 3 of my relatives had written personal statements, each one describing how my parents had privately bragged about the trust fund like it was their personal retirement jackpot. One aunt admitted my mom told her, "Victor's doing well enough. He won't even miss a few thousand here and there." Another cousin said my dad had once joked that I was basically Caleb's sponsor at this point. By the end of the hearing, the committee didn't even ask me questions. They'd seen enough. And when the final ruling came through a week later, it was clear. Full discretionary control granted. Effective immediately. It was done. The trust fund, set up by my grandfather to protect my parents, was now fully under my direction. No more scheduled monthly disbursements. No required notifications. I could release funds, reduce them, or revoke them entirely. Not out of spite, but out of design. I was now the firewall grandpa always intended. The very next morning, I sent my parents an official letter, cordial, professional, and signed by my lawyer. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, following the final decision of the Oversight Committee, this letter serves as confirmation that the family trust has officially been transitioned into full discretionary management. All further requests for financial assistance, reimbursement, or disbursement must be submitted in writing, reviewed case by case, and approved solely at the discretion of the acting trustee. Additionally, due to recent actions interpreted as an attempt to interfere with fiduciary responsibilities, the following changes have been enacted. Monthly distributions are suspended pending financial reassessment. Emergency fund access is denied until further notice. Legal representatives attempting unauthorized contact with the trust board will result in permanent revocation of benefits. Should you wish to schedule a financial planning review, please respond through legal counsel. Warm regards, Victor Bennett, trustee. I never got a reply, but that weekend, my cousin Emily sent me a screenshot from Facebook. My mom had posted a cryptic status. Sometimes the people you raise turn out to be the coldest. Comments disabled. I didn't engage. I just poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony with a breeze in my hair, knowing, for once, I wasn't the one putting out fires. I was living. The fallout spread in quiet waves. Caleb stayed in touch, but cautiously. He called once a week, usually short conversations, just updates about his job, therapy sessions, small wins. He never asked for money again. Not once. One day, he sent me a photo of his new car. A used Corolla he paid for in installments, completely on his own. I know it's not flashy, he said in the caption, but it's mine. And I didn't crash it. I smiled. He was learning. Meanwhile, word got around among the extended family. A few tried to pry for gossip. I didn't bite. I never told anyone the full story unless they already knew. I didn't need to justify myself anymore. What surprised me most was how quiet my parents stayed. No lawsuit. No appeal. No more backdoor attempts to guilt me through mutual friends. They simply faded into the background. Whether out of shame, pride, or fear, I didn't know. And I didn't care. They weren't cut off financially forever. But if they ever wanted access again, they'd have to come to me with humility, transparency, respect. And that was something they'd never learned how to give. But I had learned how to demand it. And once you learn that, there's no going back. 6 months later, I sat in my newly opened office. Nothing grand, just a clean, quiet space with big windows and a name on the door, Victor Bennett Financial. I had 10 regular clients, mostly word-of-mouth referrals. People who'd been burned by bad advice and needed someone who actually listened. I kept the business small on purpose. I wasn't chasing wealth. I already had enough. I was chasing peace. And I finally had it. One afternoon, as I closed up shop early to meet Caleb for lunch, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. It was from my mom. 3 pages. Rambling. Defensive. Emotional. But somewhere near the end, she wrote, "Maybe we asked too much of you because we knew you wouldn't say no. And maybe you finally did, because you knew we'd never stop until you did. I don't agree with how you handled it. But I can't say you were wrong." That was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get. And it was enough. I didn't write back. But I kept the letter. Not out of sentimentality, out of closure. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from the people who'd taken it for granted. And I did. I reclaimed every inch of it. Brick by brick. Day by day. No explosions. No dramatic takedowns. Just a quiet, deliberate boundary no one could cross. And the final line I left them with, burned into every letter, every silence, every decision. This time, you raised someone strong enough to walk away.